Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of War Thunder. Now as you can see here we're actually on the War Thunder website looking at one of the new premium vehicles being added, the M18 Black Cat. Now the reason I'm looking at this is because the M18 is a tank destroyer, or an American tank destroyer, and America doesn't have any tank destroyers at the moment, so we were told the tank destroyers were going to be coming not long after 1.47. It turns out they were right. It's not even been a month I don't think, and we're already getting the tank destroyers. They're already gearing up for the next patch, it seems to be. Patch 1.49. Now, this is a premium M18, so it's got a few differences. The Black Cat will have no muzzle brake and side skirts. You can actually see some pictures of the M18, so it won't have that muzzle brake, and it probably will have the side skirts. So it seems Gaijin are already well on the way to adding the tank destroyers for the American tech tree. So I've decided to do an episode on the American tank destroyers, in a similar way to my proposed tank tech tree series I have done for other nations. Now, first of all, this isn't going to have every single tank destroyer used by the American Army, because, there's so many of them. This is just what I think is needed in a basic American tank tech tree, the skeletal framework that you need to build off on in the future. Secondly, I'll post below in the description the sources I've used for the information in this episode, but most of it's probably going to come from one book, 1980 edition of the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Military Vehicles by Ian V. Hogg and John Weeks. Picked it up from a shop a few days ago. It's been very helpful on the American tank destroyers. I can't recommend it enough. If you can get a more modern copy, then, go for it. It's well worth it. But, anyway, enough of me talking. Let's get straight into the episode. Now, the first possible American tank destroyer is the M6 gun motor carriage. Now, you can see from the picture it is basically a Jeep with a 37mm gun on the back. Has basically no armour, virtually no armour. It's got a 37mm gun, like I said, and it's got a top speed of 55 miles an hour. Very exposed, very easy to destroy. It's not exactly a good tank destroyer, but you have to start somewhere. Battle rating wise, I think this would go very low, less than under 2. It'd have to be like 1.3, basically like reserved here to be any good. As you can see here, they may occasionally have put machine guns on the front, but I doubt that would be something you would have in game. But I think it would be a very good start for the American tank destroyers line. Now, the next potential tank destroyer that I have got a few confusions about, the tank destroyer itself, the stats are it has a 75mm howitzer, either an M2 or an M3. Armour is 10 to 28mm, and speed is 56 kilometers an hour or 35 miles an hour. Now, the confusion for me stems from the fact we have something called the M8A1 in-game as a holiday special gift from a little while ago. Apparently they're very similar, but the M8A1 was a prototype. I couldn't find any information in my books or barely much information online, but a few forum posts or model kit websites mentioned there was this prototype with the 75mm gun from the Sherman, which is the version we have in game in the M8A1. It's got identical stats in every way except it has the Sherman's 75mm gun. Now, that's a premium. I'm hoping Gaijin will add the M8 howitzer motor carriage with, the actual howitzer, because it would be a good stepping stone from the M3 GMC to the the M6 GMC to the M3 GMC. Going up from the small 37mm gun to the howitzer 75mm gun with low velocity up to the high velocity 75mm guns. The one in game at the moment, the M8A1, is a battle rating of 2. I think this could probably go the same place, maybe a little bit lower, 1.7, because it does have a high explosive anti-tank shell, from what I understand, that does about 89mm of penetration, so it would definitely be more than capable of dealing with enemy tanks. I think, like I said, it would be a very good progression for the American tank destroyer line. Now, the next potential American tank destroyer is the M3 gun motor carriage. Now, as you can see, it's an M3 half-track with a 75mm gun on it. Armour is only 6 to 12mm, barely enough to keep machine gun fire out. Speed is 72 kilometers an hour or 45 miles an hour, and it's got a 75mm M1897 gun on it. So it's superior to the M8 in all aspects except armour. The gun, I think, has 120 meters a second faster muzzle velocity. I'm guessing it's going to have superior penetration characteristics, and the muzzle velocity being high is going to make it easier to hit your target at long range. Now, I think this could probably go low tier 2 or high tier 1. Um, Probably high tier 1. Battle rating wise, it probably be able to, you know, duke it out with some of the lower tier German tanks, such as the Panzer IV-E or Panzer IV F1. I think it would do very good. It's a sort of stepping stone to the actual proper American tank destroyers. And with the speed, it would be very well suited for, hit and run tactics. You'd have to be careful being shot back, obviously. You've got virtually no armour. But I think it would be a very good interim tank destroyer for the Americans, on the way to the actual tank destroyers. Now, talking of the more traditional tank destroyers, the next potential tank destroyer for the American tank destroyer line is the M10 gun motor carriage. Now, this is actually quite a bit different than German and Soviet tank destroyers because it has a turret. Obviously, other nations generally have theirs in a fixed placement at the front where there's very little traverse of the gun. But the American tank destroyers tend to have a lot of, they tend to have turrets. But the stats for this, it has a speed of 48 kilometers an hour or 30 miles an hour, a 3-inch M7 gun, 76.2 millimeters, and 10 to 57 millimeters of armor. Now, this is obviously quite a bit better than the previous tank destroyers for the Americans, except for maybe in speed, but even there it's quite good. Now, the gun, I'm not entirely sure of the penetration characteristics, but a quick look online shows about 109 to 92 at 500 yards to 1,000 yards. This actually makes it, I think, about superior to the Stug 3F, which is a tier 2 German tank destroyer. Now, the Stug 3F is at a battle rating of 3.7, so probably a battle rating of 4 at least, maybe 4.3, 4.67. Because, we'll be able to demolish pretty much most German armour, pretty much massively long ranges. The only downside to it is it's relatively thin armour, but again, it's got a turret. If you've been shot and you lose your tracks or your engine, you're not exactly a sitting duck, unlike German and Russian tank destroyers. And I think this would be a very good tank good progression for the American tank destroyer line. Now, this brings us nicely on to the next potential American tank destroyer, the M18 gun motor carriage, otherwise known as the Hellcat. Now, my book lists it as having a 76mm M1A1 gun, an armour of 12 to 25mm meters. Speed is listed as 80 kilometers an hour or 50 miles an hour, but I've heard other sources say it could go up to possibly 60 or 55 miles an hour. So this is a very fast tank. I think it was one of the fastest tanks in the war. Of course, it's also got very thin armour, as said, so it's going to be quite vulnerable to enemy tanks. So, you're going to have to use it as a sort of shoot and scoot tank, getting onto their flanks, firing 1 or 2 shots, and then getting the hell out of there before the enemy can return fire. Now, the gun, from what I understand, is slightly better than the M10's gun, but not that much better in penetration characteristics. From what I understand, it does roughly the same penetration. So, where would this go on the tech tree? It would have to go after the M10, because it's a lot faster, it's got a slightly better gun, if maybe in reloading or something like that. Probably could go at about a rating of 5, which is about similar to the Jagdpanzer IV and the Panzer IV 70V. And it would make it a good stepping stone to the Tier 4 tank destroyers. Because if I put it at Tier 2, you have a bit of a big gap. But I think it would be a very good American tank destroyer at Tier 3. Now, the next vehicle I think would be a very good Tier 2 or Tier 3 premium tank destroyer. It's the, if I can get the name right, T55E1 gun motor carriage. It's got a 3-inch gun in the front, as you can see. It's fixed, more like the German and Soviet tank destroyers. Armour, I'm not actually sure of the armour, but it's probably very thin. As you can see, it's also got wheels rather than tracks. From what I understand, this was built for the desert, but it was a little too late, and, they already had capable tanks. Speed is apparently 50 miles an hour or so, 80 kilometers an hour. Um, I haven't got this in any of my books, so I'm sort of relying on internet sources for it. But I think it looks like a very unusual tank, and I think it would be quite fun as a premium vehicle. Um, I actually thought this was a post-war vehicle, but apparently it was not 1942, 1943. I think it would be a very good tier 2 or tier 3 premium. Like I said, it's very unusual, and hopefully Gaijin will add it in some form or other into the game. Now, the next potential American tank destroyer is the M36 gun motor carriage. Now, this has a much better armament than the previous tank destroyers because it has a 90mm gun, the 90mm M3 gun. Armour is 10 to 50mm and speed is 48 kilometers an hour or 30 miles an hour. So about the same as the M10 Wolverine in speed. Armour is about, I think it's actually a little bit better than the Wolverine, or a little bit worse than the Wolverine, but you know, only by something like 7mm. Now, the 90mm gun on the M36 is the same one used on the Pershings. Now, the Pershing gun in game with the basic ammunition could do 157mm penetration at 100 meters, 151 at 500, or 144 at 1000. So this would be a very good tank destroyer. It definitely have to go tier 4. The Pershing's about 6.7, so but that has a lot of armour, so I think the M36 should go about a rating of 6, 5.7 at the very lowest, but any lower than that it starts seal clubbing, so 6, possibly a little bit higher than that. I think it would be a very good tank destroyer. It's got decent speed, good gun, okay-ish armour. I think it would be a very good American tank destroyer. Now, the M36 more or less ends the World War II tank destroyers, and after this we go to the post-war American tank destroyers. Now, I've put them in the order I think they should appear. This isn't necessarily chronological, so just giving you a heads up. Now, the next potential American tank destroyer is the M56 Scorpion. Now, it was built for the airborne troops, from what I understand, so it's quite a light vehicle. It's got a 90mm gun, armour is just listed as nil, so very, very light armour, and speed is 45 kilometers an hour or 28 miles an hour. Now, it's again the same gun as the Pershing, but it may have some post-war ammunition. Now, I actually think this could very possibly go as a premium tank, possibly. It really depends how Gaijin want to do it. Because it's in a bit of a weird position. It's got the same gun as some of the previous tank destroyers. It's not really good enough to go tier 5, or if it is tier 5, very low tier 5. I think this would be a very good premium at tier 4. The only problem is it was built in 1953, so it does sort of set a bit of a weird precedent. There is actually a German tank, the SDKFC 141, which is tier 1 despite being built in 1945. So I suppose it is possible it could be put as tier 4, you know, and it wouldn't be too out of chronological order. But yeah, it depends how Gaijin do it. I think it'd be worth adding it, but not sure where it should be placed really. Now, the next potential American tank destroyer is the T28/T95. It started off as the 105mm gun motor carriage T95, but they renamed it in 1946 to the super heavy tank T28. But you can see there it looks more like a, you know, tank destroyer. It's got a fixed gun, so it makes more sense to be in the tank destroyer line. If you go into the patch 1.49 rumour thread, which I'll have linked in the description below, they've actually got one of the quotes from the developers, which basically confirms that it will probably be added in the American tank destroyer lineup. So we probably are going to get this tank destroyer. And it's quite a good tank destroyer. It's got a 105mm gun, 12 inches or 300mm of armour. It would be the most heavily armoured tank or tank destroyer in the game, pretty much. But it can only do something like 8 miles per hour or 13 kilometers an hour. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find much information about the gun it used, you know, its penetration characteristics. I did find one or two documents online, and I'll link you to the T28/T95 thread that's in the suggestion forum, because they seem to have some information on it. But from what I can understand, the only sort of information we've got is that it could pierce a 5-inch armour plate during the tests, which is only like 130 odd, 120 odd millimeters. So, but we don't know much other than that. I've heard some posts about it being able to do 200mm at like a few hundred meters, but I don't know exactly. So It's a bit hard to find information on the gun, like I said. Where would it be battle rating wise? If it is 200 millimeters at like 100 meters or a few hundred meters, that's about. It'd be quite similar to the Jag Tiger, which is a battle rating of 8. So it'd have to be battle rating of 8 probably. Yeah, it'd have to be pretty much the highest battle rating. But I think it would be a very good and unique tank, and give an American counterpart to the Mouse. Now, the next and ultimately last tank destroyer I'm looking at is the M50 Ontos or Ontos. Now, this is quite a bit different from the T95 in that it's quite a lot smaller, but it's got 6 recoilless rifles, M40s. I don't know if they're 105 or 106 millimeters. Now, it's quite small and a lot faster than the T95, 30 miles an hour or 48 kilometers an hour. Armor's only 13 millimeters, but and like I said, it's got 6 recoilless rifles. It has 18 spare shells, but you have to reload them on the outside of the vehicle, so I don't know how that's going to work. But the reason I've put this last is the penetration characteristics of these weapons. The heat round of these weapons was able to penetrate about 400 millimeters. At the moment, the best penetration is with the M103, also with a heat shell, which is about 300 millimeters, 380, so just shy of it's a bit better than the M103. So I think this would have to be battle rating of 8, just to count on account of its guns. It'd be a good counterpart to the T95, one being a big heavy assault tank and then the other one shooting, scooting. I think it would be a very good end tank for the American tank destroyer line. So that's it for this episode. Hope it's been informative and given you a rough idea on what we can see in the American tank destroyer lineup. I do hope all of these tanks will be added in one form or another. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, this isn't a full list of every American tank destroyer. There are other potential American tank destroyers. This is just what I think is needed for a basic American tank destroyer tree, as a starting point. Well, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the episode. I hope you'll stick around to check out my other Tech Tree episodes. I've done Tech Tree episodes on the British, Italian, Japanese. I'm still in the middle of doing the Japanese, and soon the French, so hopefully you'll check them out as well. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.